Maya Carter never needed to raise her voice to command attention. She carried herself with a quiet strength that spoke louder than words, a presence that demanded respect without asking for it. From the time she was a child, she understood that the world often tried to shrink people like her, to box them in, to silence them, to tell them where they belonged. But Maya never fit neatly into a by-day. She was an artist, a sculptor who could take a block of marble and carve out something breathtaking, something alive. Strength and beauty, power and grace, her work was a reflection of the woman she had become. But her true calling was something far greater. Every evening, she stepped onto the mats at the Rising Phoenix Community Center, teaching women how to defend themselves. To outsiders, it was just another class, just another hobby. To Maya, it was a mission. She had seen too many women live in fear, too many people told to make themselves smaller for their own safety. But here, in this space, she taught them to reclaim what the world had tried to take. Self-defense was more than just blocking a punch or landing a kick. It was about standing firm, about knowing that your body belongs to you, and no one has the right to take your power. That night, after her final class, she felt the familiar rush of satisfaction as her students walked out taller, stronger, bolder than before. It was the same feeling she got when she completed a sculpture, the knowledge that she had created something unbreakable. With her gym bag slung over her shoulder, she stepped outside into the cool night air. The streets were quiet, the city bathed in silver moonlight, the park ahead stretching like a darkened pathway home. She welcomed the silence, letting the adrenaline of the night settle as she walked. But then, it came. That prickle at the back of her neck, that shift in the air. Years of training had sharpened her instincts, and now every fiber of her being told her she wasn't alone. She didn't stop, she didn't panic, but she adjusted her grip on her bag, her steps steady, her breath controlled, because Maya Carter was not the kind of woman who ignored her instincts, and she was definitely not the kind of woman who went down without a fight. Maya Carter had spent years training her body to be an instrument of precision, every movement deliberate, every sense sharpened. So when the feeling of being watched crawled up her spine, she didn't dismiss it as paranoia. It was a quiet but insistent whisper, a warning she had learned to trust. The park was mostly empty at this hour. A few streetlights cast long, flickering shadows across the pavement. The occasional rustle of leaves in the wind was the only sound besides her own steady footsteps. But she knew better than to focus only on what she could hear. Threats didn't always announce themselves. A lifetime of discipline kept her from turning around too quickly. Instead, she took in her surroundings in fragments, her peripheral vision, catching the faint movement near a lamppost, the reflection of something metallic, the way the air itself felt different. Someone was watching her, studying her. She adjusted the strap of her gym bag, keeping her steps even. Never let them see you hesitate. That was one of the first lessons she taught her students. Fear gives power to those looking to take it. Confidence takes it back. Across the park, Officer Derek Lawson leaned against his patrol car, his gaze locked on Maya with the kind of suspicion that had nothing to do with actual wrongdoing. In his eyes, she was already guilty of something, of being in the wrong place, of moving through the world with too much certainty, of existing without fear. Lawson had joined the force with grand ideas of honor and duty, but somewhere along the way, those ideals had withered under frustration and resentment. His badge was supposed to represent authority, but lately it felt more like a shield to hide behind. And tonight, as he watched Maya Carter walk with too much self-assurance, he felt something bitter coil inside him. She didn't look nervous. That alone was enough to make his jaw tighten. Why wasn't she nervous? Most people, especially those who looked like her, would have already picked up their pace, avoided eye contact, given him that look. The one that said, "I don't want trouble." But she didn't. She walked like she had every right to be here. His hand twitched toward his belt, the weight of the baton a familiar comfort. Maya felt the shift before she heard his voice. A presence moving closer, the space around her no longer just hers. "Hey, stop right there." The sharp command cut through the night. Maya stopped mid-step, but she didn't flinch. She turned, her expression calm but assessing. This was a moment that could turn dangerous in an instant. Lawson approached, his posture stiff with authority. "What are you doing out here?" Maya tilted her head slightly, unimpressed by his accusatory tone. "Walking home." His eyes flicked to the gym bag slung over her shoulder. "What's in the bag?" The tension between them thickened. a silent understanding passing through the air. This wasn't about a bag. It never was. And Maya Carter knew exactly where this was going. Maya Carter stood still, her breath steady, her expression unreadable. The night air felt heavier now, charged with an unseen force pressing down on her. She had been in tense situations before, sparring matches, close encounters, moments where instinct determined everything. But this wasn't a training session. This wasn't a test. This was real, and the stakes were much higher. Officer Derek Lawson took a slow, measured step toward her, his gaze locked onto her like a predator sizing up its prey. The tension in his jaw, the way his fingers flexed near his belt, he was already looking for a reason to escalate. "I asked you what's in the bag," Lawson repeated, his voice sharper now, more demanding. Maya didn't miss the way his tone had shifted. He was searching for control, for submission, but she had done nothing wrong, and she wouldn't let herself be backed into a corner. "Just my workout gear," she replied evenly. "I came from the community center. I teach self-defense there." Lawson narrowed his eyes as if that explanation didn't sit right with him. He didn't want answers, he wanted obedience. "You don't look like a teacher," he muttered, his fingers now resting on the baton at his side. Maya clenched her jaw but kept her posture relaxed. She had heard comments like that before, laced with doubt, with suspicion. A woman like her, strong, confident, unafraid, always seemed to be a problem for men like Lawson. "I don't see how that's relevant," she responded, keeping her voice measured. Lawson took another step forward, his presence now looming over her. "Let me see the bag." Maya's grip instinctively tightened around the strap. It was a small movement, but he noticed. That was all it took. Lawson's expression shifted into something darker, something that made Maya's stomach tighten, not out of fear, but out of frustration. He was going to push this, no matter what she said. "You're acting real suspicious right now," he said, his voice tinged with satisfaction, as if he had just found the proof he was looking for. Maya exhaled slowly, forcing herself to remain calm. "I don't think that's necessary, officer. I've answered your questions, and I'd like to be on my way." But Lawson wasn't listening. He wasn't here to let her go. "I'm not asking," he snapped, taking another step closer. "I'm telling you, open the bag, or I'll do it for you." Maya's pulse quickened, but outwardly she remained composed. This moment was critical. She had seen situations like this go wrong, where fear made people hesitate, where power tilted too far in one direction. Slowly, deliberately, she set the bag down on the ground and unzipped it. Inside were a pair of boxing gloves, a towel, and a set of wooden training knives used for martial arts demonstrations. Lawson's eyes flickered with something new confirmation. He reached down, picking up one of the wooden knives, turning it over in his hands. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. "You some kind of street fighter?" Maya met his gaze, unshaken. "They're training tools," Lawson scoffed. He didn't care about the truth. He had already made up his mind. "Yeah, right," he muttered, his grip tightening around the wooden handle. "Looks like you're gearing up for something else to me." Maya straightened her posture. She had been polite, she had answered his questions. But now, this wasn't about suspicion, it was about control. "Officer," she said, her voice firm, "I have complied with everything you've asked. Now, unless you have a legitimate reason to detain me, I'd like to leave." Lawson's jaw twitched. That was the last thing he wanted to hear. "You don't tell me how to do my job," he snapped, his tone venomous. "I decide when you're free to go." The air between them was thick, charged with something unspoken, yet undeniable. This wasn't just a routine stop. It was a test of power, a battle neither of them had planned for, but one neither was willing to lose. Maya Carter could feel the shift in the air, the unspoken battle of wills tightening around them like a wire drawn too taut. Officer Derek Lawson stood in front of her, gripping the wooden training knife he had pulled from her bag, as if it were evidence of some imagined crime. His stance had changed, more rigid, more confrontational. He wasn't just questioning her anymore, he was looking for an excuse. She had seen it before. The way authority, when unchecked, could twist suspicion into justification. How quickly assumptions could turn into accusations. Lawson's fingers twitched around the handle of the practice knife. "You think you're clever, huh?" he muttered, his voice laced with irritation. "Walking around here like you own the place, carrying whatever the hell this is." Maya's lips pressed into a firm line. She knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted her to react, to slip up. to give him a reason to escalate, but she wasn't going to fall into that trap. "Officer," she said, voice calm but unwavering, "that is a wooden training knife. It is not a weapon. I've explained what I do. I've answered your questions. Now, I'd like to be on my way." Lawson's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, closing the gap between them, his presence heavy and oppressive. "I don't think so," he shot back. "I don't like your attitude. You're acting suspicious. People like you always think the rules don't apply." "People like you." Maya's chest tightened, but she kept her expression unreadable. She had learned long ago that some fights were won, not with fists, but with control. And right now, control was the only thing standing between her and a dangerous situation. Lawson let the training knife drop back into the bag, but his hand drifted toward the baton on his belt. "Turn around and put your hands on your head." Maya didn't move. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice steady. "You heard me," Lawson snapped. "Turn around. Hands on your head. Now." Maya's breath was slow, controlled. She met his eyes, refusing to look away. This was it. The moment where choices became consequences. Where she either let herself be railroaded into submission or stood firm against the weight of his authority. "For what?" she asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" Lawson's face darkened. He didn't have an answer. He didn't need one. He only needed power. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," he warned. Maya knew that phrase. She had heard it before, seen where it led. It was never about making things easier. It was about forcing obedience. Her heartbeat thrummed in her ears, but she kept her breathing steady. "I've complied with everything you've asked, officer," she said, her voice cool but edged with steel. "You have no reason to detain me." Lawson's nostrils flared. "I decide that," he snarled, his hand fully gripping his baton now. "Not you." The space between them crackled with tension. The night around them felt silent, waiting. Maya had trained for moments like this, but she had never imagined having to use her skills against someone who was supposed to protect, not persecute. She could see it in his stance, the way his body tensed. He was going to make a move, and when he did, she would be ready. Maya Carter had felt this moment coming long before it arrived. The way Officer Derek Lawson's grip tightened around his baton, the subtle shift in his stance, the barely restrained anger in his voice, it was all leading to this. He wasn't looking for compliance. He was looking for control. She had been in enough sparring matches to recognize the signs of an impending attack. The difference was, this wasn't a dojo. There were no referees, no mats to cushion a fall. Just the cold pavement and the reality that one wrong move could change the course of her life forever. Lawson moved first. His baton swung through the air with force, aimed not just to subdue, but to punish. But Maya was faster. Years of training took over, instinct overriding hesitation. She sidestepped smoothly, her body moving with a precision that had been drilled into her for years. The baton sliced through empty air, the force of the missed strike pulling Lawson slightly off balance. Maya saw her opening. With a practiced motion, she deflected his arm, using his own momentum against him. The baton clattered to the ground, its metallic clang echoing through the stillness of the park. Lawson stumbled but quickly regained his footing, his face contorted with rage. His pride had been wounded, and that made him even more dangerous. He hadn't expected resistance. He hadn't expected her to be better than him. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them was charged, the weight of what had just happened sinking in. Maya didn't strike. She didn't attack. She simply held her ground, her stance strong but defensive. She wasn't here to fight, but she wasn't here to surrender either. Lawson, however, was past the point of reason. His hand shot to his hip, reaching for his taser, desperation flashing in his eyes. Maya's heart pounded, but her focus remained razor sharp. The moment he reached, she moved. Before he could fully draw the weapon, she stepped in, grabbing his wrist and twisting just enough to break his grip without causing injury. The taser slipped from his fingers, landing beside the fallen baton. A sharp gasp came from nearby. Maya barely registered the presence of bystanders, joggers who had stopped to watch, their murmurs carrying across the park. She knew their eyes were on them now, and so did Lawson. His breathing was ragged, his body trembling with frustration. He had lost control of the situation, and he knew it. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his expression. Maya didn't move. She let the silence stretch between them, let him feel the weight of his own choices. This wasn't about strength anymore. This was about who would break first. And Maya Carter was not the kind of woman who broke. The sound of the baton hitting the pavement should have been the final warning. But Officer Derek Lawson wasn't the type of man to heed warnings. He was the kind who dug his heels in deeper when faced with resistance, the kind who refused to accept that he had lost control. And now, as he stood there, his breath ragged, his fists clenched, and his taser lying uselessly on the ground, his rage had nowhere else to go but inward festering, boiling, ready to explode. Maya Carter remained still, her muscles coiled, her stance strong but non-threatening. She wasn't attacking. She was surviving. And yet, Lawson looked at her like she was the problem, like she was the criminal. The night air had gone eerily silent, but then a murmur at first broke through. "Hey, is everything okay here?" Maya didn't turn, but she felt it. The presence of others, joggers, passers-by, strangers who had stopped to watch. Some had pulled out their phones, their screens casting a faint glow in the dim park light. And suddenly, Lawson wasn't alone anymore. His fingers twitched, his jaw tightening. Maya could see the war playing out inside him. Pride versus self-preservation. He had wanted this to be a quiet assertion of power, a routine encounter where his word would have been final. But now there were witnesses. And then, another voice this time, firm and authoritative. "Officer Lawson." A flashlight beam cut through the night, landing directly between them. The voice belonged to Officer Ryan Mitchell, his badge gleaming under the streetlights as he approached. Maya exhaled slowly, keeping her posture neutral as Mitchell assessed the situation. He was taller than Lawson, broader in the shoulders, and unlike the officer who had been harassing her, he wasn't radiating anger, he was radiating control. "Got a call about a disturbance," Mitchell continued, his gaze shifting from Lawson to Maya. "Want to tell me what's going on here?" Lawson straightened, his chest heaving as he scrambled to reclaim the authority slipping through his fingers. "She resisted arrest," he spat. "She was carrying potential weapons, refused to comply, and then she attacked me." Maya's stomach turned. The lie came so easily. But before she could respond, a voice from the crowd, someone she didn't even know, cut in. "That's not what happened." Maya turned slightly, catching the face of a jogger, a man in his 40s, arms crossed, his phone still recording. "She defended herself," another voice added. "You attacked her first." Lawson's face darkened. The version of events he had planned to tell was unraveling in real time. Mitchell's eyes flicked to Maya. "Ma'am," he said, his tone calm but firm. "Would you like to explain?" Maya met his gaze, and for the first time that night, she felt the scales begin to shift. Maya Carter took a slow breath, her heartbeat steadying as she met Officer Ryan Mitchell's gaze. The weight of the moment settled over her like a heavy shroud. This wasn't just about her anymore. The presence of witnesses, cell phone cameras, and another officer on the scene had changed the dynamic. If Lawson had been alone with her, his word would have been absolute. But now the truth had a chance to be heard. Lawson, still bristling with anger, clung desperately to his version of events. "She was carrying weapons," he repeated, voice sharp with frustration. "She resisted arrest. She's dangerous." Mitchell's expression didn't shift. He simply glanced down at the bag still lying open on the pavement, the wooden training knives inside, the abandoned baton and taser nearby. No weapons, no justification for force. Just an officer who had clearly lost control. The air between them stretched taut, and then Mitchell spoke, his voice calm but firm. "Carrying practice knives isn't illegal, you know that." He turned back to Lawson, his gaze hardening. "You also know that resisting arrest requires there to be a lawful reason for the arrest in the first place. So, tell me, Lawson, what was your justification?" Lawson's lips pressed into a thin, angry line. "She was suspicious," he said, but even he seemed to realize how weak that sounded now. Mitchell's brow furrowed. "Suspicious," he repeated, his voice slow and deliberate, as if daring Lawson to make that his final answer. Maya didn't speak, not yet. She had learned the power of silence, of letting people reveal themselves for what they were. Lawson shifted uncomfortably, but his pride was too great to back down completely. He turned back to Mitchell, his voice rising. "You weren't here, You didn't see how she was acting. A voice from the small crowd interjected. We did. All eyes turned to the joggers who had stopped to watch. One of them, a woman with her arms crossed over her chest, spoke up. She didn't do anything wrong. She was just walking and he came at her like she was a criminal. Another person, a younger man holding up his phone, added, I recorded the whole thing, if you need proof. Maya saw the moment Lawson realized he had lost control of the narrative. His fists clenched at his sides, his breathing shallow. He wasn't used to being challenged. He wasn't used to being held accountable. Mitchell studied him for a long, quiet moment before turning back to Maya. Ma'am, he said, his tone softer now, I appreciate your patience. Are you hurt? Maya met his eyes, measuring him, deciding if she could trust him even in the smallest way. I'm fine, she said, her voice steady. Mitchell gave a small nod. Good, because I need to sort this out, and I want to do it right. The tension still lingered, but the power dynamic had shifted. For the first time that night, Maya wasn't the one under scrutiny. Lawson was, and this time, he would have to answer for his actions. For a brief moment, silence settled over the park. The weight of truth pressed down on Officer Derek Lawson like a suffocating force, squeezing the last remnants of his control from his grip. He had lost the crowd. He had lost the narrative. And worst of all, he had lost the one thing that mattered to him, most undisputed authority. Maya Carter could see it in his stance, the way his shoulders tensed, the way his nostrils flared as he scanned the scene. He was searching for a way out, some way to reclaim the power that had slipped through his fingers. Then, he made his final mistake. With a sudden, reckless motion, Lawson lunged not toward Mitchell, not toward the bystanders, but toward her. His hand shot toward his belt, his fingers curling around his baton once again. Maya had already braced herself for this. She saw it in the way his body leaned forward, in the tightness of his jaw, in the blind rage twisting his features. He wasn't thinking anymore. He was acting on instinct, on desperation. The baton swung toward her, but Maya was ready. She sidestepped the attack with fluid ease, letting his momentum carry him forward. Before he could recover, she reached out, gripping his wrist and twisting just enough to break his hold without causing unnecessary harm. The baton clattered to the pavement for the second time that night. Lawson stumbled forward, thrown off balance, and that's when Officer Ryan Mitchell stepped in. That's enough! Mitchell's voice cut through the chaos like a gunshot. His presence was commanding, his authority clear. Before Lawson could make another move, Mitchell seized his arm and wrenched it behind his back. The struggle was brief. Lawson was furious, humiliated, but outmatched. Mitchell moved with purpose, securing the handcuffs around his wrists in one swift motion. Maya exhaled, her muscles still coiled with tension. But she didn't move. She had won. The crowd murmured around them, their whispers carrying the weight of everything they had just witnessed. Some had their phones still raised, others simply watched in stunned silence. Mitchell turned Lawson toward him, his expression unreadable. You just assaulted an unarmed citizen, he said, his voice low and sharp. You escalated an unnecessary situation, and you're going to answer for it. Lawson seethed, his face red with barely contained rage. You're making a mistake, he hissed. Mitchell shook his head. Number, you made the mistake. Maya let out a slow breath, her heartbeat finally steadying. It was over. Or at least, this part of it was. As Mitchell led Lawson toward his patrol car, Maya stood tall, unshaken. She had defended herself. She had held her ground. And now, for the first time that night, she knew she wasn't the one who had something to fear. The flashing red and blue lights painted streaks across the pavement as Officer Ryan Mitchell secured Derek Lawson in the back of his patrol car. The once arrogant officer now sat silent, his wrists locked in steel, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked as though it might shatter. The fight was over, but Maya Carter knew that the battle for accountability had just begun. She stood near the edge of the commotion, her breathing steady, but her mind still processing the events of the night. She had defended herself, but that didn't mean justice was guaranteed. Too many times she had seen situations like this slip through the cracks, where the truth was buried, where the guilty walked away unpunished, where the victim was blamed simply for surviving. Mitchell approached her, his presence no longer a looming question mark, but something more grounded. Are you sure you're all right? He asked. Maya nodded. I'm fine. Mitchell studied her for a moment before speaking again. Lawson's going to be processed tonight. Internal affairs will take over from here. Maya didn't let herself relax just yet. And what happens next? Mitchell exhaled, glancing toward the patrol car where Lawson sat, his expression unreadable behind the tinted window. That depends, he admitted. I'll file my report. The footage from the witnesses will help, but his voice trailed off, as if weighing whether or not to say what he was really thinking. But officers like him have gotten away with worse before, Maya finished for him. Mitchell's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. The reality hung between them, unspoken but undeniable. Lawson had a badge. That alone had shielded men like him for decades. But this time, Maya wasn't going to let it happen. I want to file a formal complaint, she said firmly. Mitchell nodded. I'll make sure it gets through the right channels. The weight of the night still pressed on Maya's shoulders, but this time, she wasn't carrying it alone. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and when she pulled it out, she saw a text from an unknown number. Ms. Carter, this is Detective Avery from Internal Affairs. We've received a preliminary report on tonight's incident and would like to speak with you further. Maya stared at the screen, a flicker of hope sparking in her chest. This wasn't just being brushed under the rug. Someone was listening. Someone was watching. Mitchell must have seen the shift in her expression. What is it? She held up her phone. It's starting. Mitchell gave a slow nod. Then, let's make sure it doesn't stop. Maya tightened her grip around the device, standing a little taller. She had spent her life teaching others how to fight back. Now, it was her turn to prove that some fights weren't just about survival. They were about making sure no one else had to fight the same battle again. The sun poured through the window of Maya Carter's apartment the next morning, casting long golden streaks across her kitchen table. She sat in quiet reflection, a steaming cup of tea warming her palms, but her mind was still restless. The events of the previous night played on repeat in her head, the confrontation, the control, the way Officer Derek Lawson's authority had crumbled under the weight of his own abuse. But this wasn't over. Her phone vibrated against the table, breaking her thoughts. She picked it up, her eyes narrowing slightly at the unfamiliar number. Ms. Carter, this is Detective Avery from Internal Affairs. Thank you for your time last night. I want to assure you that we are taking this matter seriously. Lawson has been placed on suspension pending further investigation. If you would like to file an official complaint, I can guide you through the process. Maya exhaled slowly. Suspension. It wasn't justice yet, but it was a step. She typed back a response. I want to see this through. Let me know what I need to do. There was a time when she might have let it go, let the system do what it would, accepting that accountability was rare and justice even rarer. But last night had been different. This time, people had seen. This time, there was evidence. This time, she wasn't alone. Later that afternoon, Maya returned to Rising Phoenix Community Center, the place where she felt most grounded. The energy of the space was always a balm to her spirit, the thrum of voices, the rhythmic echo of gloves hitting punching bags, the quiet hum of resilience being built one lesson at a time. As she walked in, conversations hushed, heads turned. Word had spread. A young woman, one of her students from last night's class, approached hesitantly. Ms. Carter, we heard what happened. Are you okay? Maya gave a small, reassuring nod. I'm fine. Another student stepped forward, her voice quieter. Did he get away with it? Maya straightened, feeling the weight of their stares, the unspoken fears woven between their words. They weren't just asking about her, they were asking about themselves. No, she said firmly. Not this time. The words settled into the space, quiet but powerful. She moved to the center of the training mats, motioning for her students to gather. Today's lesson wouldn't just be about technique. It would be about what it meant to fight beyond the physical. Strength, she began, meeting each of their gazes, isn't just about throwing a punch or knowing how to defend yourself. It's about standing your ground. It's about knowing your rights. It's about understanding that your voice, your presence, your existence is not something anyone has the right to challenge. She saw the way her words sank in, the way their postures shifted ever so slightly, shoulders back, chins raised. This was why she fought, and she wasn't done yet. As the class wrapped up, Maya wiped her brow and made her way toward the door, only to find Officer Ryan Mitchell waiting just outside. She studied him carefully, But this time, she wasn't wary. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said. Mitchell gave a small shrug. "Just wanted to let you know Lawson's suspension is official. Internal Affairs is moving forward with the investigation. And if you need support in any way, I'm here." Maya studied him for a moment before extending a hand. "Then hold on to that commitment," she said. He took it. A small gesture, but one that carried the weight of change. As Maya stepped out into the cooling evening air, she knew that the fight for justice wasn't a single battle, it was a war. But for the first time in a long time, she felt something close to hope. And hope, she knew, was its own kind of strength. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. See you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. See you in the next one.